Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you kindly for stopping by. It's always appreciated. I apologise for my absence yesterday, but we had the Pope in town, and I had a front row seat. He actually conducted a service just outside my window at the University of Nairobi grounds, so it was most interesting. And I'll come to that momentarily, but let me remind you, tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. we serve breakfast at Mindspeak. We've got Kiprono Kitoni, who's the chairman of the Kenya National Chamber, chairman of Radio Africa Group, media. He's a farmer. He's one of the biggest dealers for Safaricom, and much, much more, and an economic diplomat. And he'll be well worth listening to. Plus, there's been a little bit of a spat with Kepsa to give it a bit of masala just before the Mindspeak session. Home thoughts, I'm finished up my Mario Vargas Llosa, The Bad Girl, and I'm sort of going through backwards and forwards looking for things that catch my fancy. And this book was very interesting, something I would not normally read, but it's about Ricardo Samacurcio, who's in love with a bad girl. He loves her as a teenager known as Lily in Lima in 1950, when she flits into his life one summer and disappears again without explanation. He loves her still when she reappears as a revolutionary in 1960s Paris, then later as Mrs. Richardson, the wife of a wealthy Englishman, and again as the mistress of a sinister Japanese businessman in Tokyo. However poorly she treats him, he's doomed to worship her, charting Ricardo's expatriate life through his romances with this shape-shifting woman. Vargas Llosa has created a beguiling epic romance about the life-altering power of obsession. La joie venait toujours après les peines, asked Ricardo, quoting Apollinaire, after the bad girl has left him once again. Does joy always come after pain? For the children, I think this is very powerful, for the children of the developing world drift homeless over the oceans of affluence in which they can never be at home. For Ricardo, whose life doesn't seem to encompass real joy or pain, but some middling level of non-feeling, and for the world he lives in, a world of constant upheaval punctuated by bolts of violence, the answer is a resounding no. Very powerful book. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Pierre, Peter Size 10 on Twitter, tweeted me first sighting of Pope Francis. Shot. This at Nyayo Stadium roundabout. The Pope has he's been a big superstar type chap in his visit. I tweeted this morning, the Pope of Hope with a moral compass and a way of saying things that is gentle and on point. And it was as if Nairobi had become so much more courteous whilst he was here as well. From my point of view, God is the light that illuminates the darkness, even if it does not dissolve it. And he says a spark of divine light is within each of us. Powerful. Put up the photograph I took of him yesterday as he was outside my window. You get a sight of the city. There were a lot of people, and of course it had rained, so it was very wet, and you can still see the mud if you look out my window. Let's move on to political reflections. Putin and Erdogan remain toe-to-toe. And I wrote about Putin's sort of being a geopolitical grandmaster on the 5th of October when I said you could hear the squealing starting immediately from Ankara to Riyadh when Russia intervened in Syria. And moving on, Putin said this to got on Reuters: why did we pass this information to the Americans? Basically saying that they passed all the information of where their planes were flying to the Americans. Either they were not controlling what their allies were doing, or they are leaking this information all over the place, Putin said. Lavrov, all evidence says Turkey planned shooting down Su-24. Incident was a well-prepared ambush. The million-dollar question, and this is the question Putin keeps coming back to, is how is ISIL selling oil and who is buying it? I agree with this comment from Counterpunch. Turkey's shooting down of a Russian jet shows the utter desperation currently sweeping through the regime change camp as Russia closes in Syria. And Erdogan has a bit of form in this kind of matter. You won't forget that there was that very famous chemical weapons tripwire in Syria. And if you listen to Seymour Hersh and the link to YouTube interviews on Rich Wrap-Ups about this very matter, you will realize that he's playing a game of escalation, like he tried to do with POTUS, where he created that chemical weapons tripwire in Syria, which President Obama subsequently sidestepped. And similarly, it seems NATO's sidestepping this one as well. About 4 million Russian holidaymakers visit Turkey annually. Turkey imports nearly 2/3 of its 50 billion cubic meters BCM of annual natural gas consumption from Russia. The Russians are saying they can substitute Turkey's fish imports. They posted a very nice photograph of some salmon. Russia, in response, obviously getting this economic response, has also deployed a hard power response, deploying advanced S-400 air defense missile systems in Syria. Nick de Larinaga of the IHS's Jane's Weekly says the message is that the Russians are trying to send is that they're capable of defending themselves in Syria should the situation escalate. Let's move on from that flashpoint, which remains very flashing. Mohammed bin Nayef wants to make a statement. He wants to be seen as very strong by killing 52 people in one go. Saudi authorities appear set in the next few days to carry out a series of beheadings across the country of more than 50 men convicted of terrorism offences. A leading Shia cleric, and this is going to be highly problematical, Sheikh Nimr al-Nimr, arrested in a shootout with security forces in 2012, is among those thought to be facing execution. The Shia public will not be fooled, and if the executions go ahead, there will be a Shia revolt, said Mr. Faki. And I concluded by saying this marks the moment a 30-something crown prince started to lose the kingdom. Put up a photograph of a man waiting to be executed in Saudi Arabia. The Desert Kingdom is poised to put more than 50 men to death. Somebody who drew the comparison between the Saudi government and ISIS is being sued, but you can't help but draw that comparison. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Qatar tweeted, His Highness the Emir and Venezuelan President witnessed signing of agreements. I thought that was interesting. Samantha Power tweeted, nations voting against UN resolution supporting and protecting people who bravely promote and defend human rights. And Kenya's name is up there. Holga, China's reserves were $3.525 billion in October 2015, down 11% from the peak, but still the world's largest. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro 106.15, dollar index 99.84, Japanese yen 122.40, Swissy 102.37, the pound 150.80, Aussie 0.7216, India rupee 66.755, South Korean won 1148.84, Rial 374.27, Egyptian pound 783, and the rand much softer 14.279. Dollar index, let me put up a 3-month chart. It looks very strong, but I put that caveat out there that I think it's a very dangerous time to be lifting rates in December in very thin markets, which will just amplify moves, but the market is priced in that rate hike as if it were a shoo-in. US investment bank Goldman Sachs predicts a long ice age for the euro. Look at that prediction going to 2020. Jonathan Ferro, BNP Paribas, now expects a 20 basis point cut in the ECB deposit rate in December versus a previous cut prediction of 10 basis points. Euro dollar remains soft but above levels of below 106. I'll put up a 3-month chart. Commodity markets, Anglo-American PLC could raise more than $10 billion by selling its De Beers diamond business, according to HSBC. The commodity supercycle is dead and buried. Have a look at this chart. The gauge tracking the performance of 22 natural resources has plunged 2/3 from its peak and is at the lowest level since 1999. I said this, in November last year. I said the commodity supercycle is dead in the water. Gold, let me put up a 6-month chart. We're around the 1068 level. Target is triple digits. Crude oil, $42.40 in the US, looking for a 30 handle. Pontifex, the Pope, catastrophic if climate deal derailed. I couldn't agree more, and I wrote on the 23rd of November, we have created massive interference in the cosmic tuning phenomenon that we find all across the globe with this weather, where we've lifted it beyond its band. Emerging markets, Abu Dhabi, where Sheikh Mohammed holds court, as Ferrari World and branches of New York University and Paris's Sorbonne, Guggenheim and Louvre museums are under construction. UAE's business model has largely worked, turning it from a $50 billion economy in 1990 to the Arab world's second largest after Saudi Arabia, with output of $400 billion last year. On October 4, the Prince was far from those glitzy landmarks in the small northern emirate of al-Quwain. There, the family of Ahmed Hebaitan al-Balushi was in mourning. He was one of more than 50 Emirati soldiers killed by a missile attack in Yemen while fighting Shiite rebels with ties to Iran, and saying that the Sheikh has engaged the UAE in that war alongside Saudi Arabia, talking about this quite militaristic, Spartan response to the situation. Let's move on to Africa. Mozambique's currency, the Metical, dropped as much as 21% to an all-time low of 57.50 before paring losses to trade 16% lower at 53.80. It has depreciated 39% this year, the biggest decline among 24 African currencies tracked by Bloomberg. That's after the Zambian kwacha. Samora Machel, this is a statue of Samora Machel in the Praça de Independência Square in Maputo. Inflation in Zambia accelerated to 19.5% last month, the highest since September 2005, from 14.3% in October, the Central Statistical Office said in a report released on Thursday in Lusaka. Prices rose 5% in 1 month. We know about this. The kwacha has fallen 42% this year, and we've got a desperate situation. I think President Lungu needs to bite the bullet, dial up Madame Lagarde, and do what President Mahama eventually did. Rand Merchant Bank said on Thursday it will stop supplying Angolan banks with US dollars from November 30, a move that could pile pressure on Angola's ailing Kwanza currency. That's a big concern. This is a concern across much of sub-Saharan Africa right now. South Africa is sitting on a food price time bomb. Interesting piece. The effect of the worst drought in more than 2 decades is being compounded by the Rand's 18% plunge against the dollar this year to a record low. The country at the moment is in such a space that it can hardly come up with quick fixes, but at the same time the government will fear the social disturbance that may come with food riots. South African all-share bounced 0.61% yesterday. It's up 4.94% this year. Dollar Rand, I expect new all-time lows. Let me put up a 6-month chart. Egyptian pound 783.01. Egyptian EGX 30 index down 27.99% year to date, not far from a 2015 low. Bloomberg is saying the Buhari bounce becomes bust. When Muhammadu Buhari clinched victory in Nigeria's presidential elections in March, stocks soared as investors looked to the former military ruler to reverse decades of economic mismanagement and policy inertia. Money flowed into stocks and bonds. And now saying that same money is fleeing as growth prospects diminish along with oil prices. After the initial euphoria, people have become disillusioned. He would probably say that he's being deliberative and cautious, but we expected more. Nigeria's benchmark stock index has plunged 22% since reaching a year high on April 2nd, the day after Buhari was declared the winner of the presidential race against Goodluck Jonathan. Hiatus has compounded the pain caused by the slide in the price of crude. Many filling stations ran dry this month as the government withheld fuel subsidies to suppliers. An even bigger concern for many investors is the authorities' Naira policy. The Central Bank of Nigeria, with Buhari's backing, has burned through $4.3 billion of reserves this year and choked off supply of foreign exchange to banks and their customers to defend the Naira, even as major oil exporters such as Russia and Colombia have let their currencies slide. The restrictions prompted JP Morgan and Chase to remove Nigeria from its local currency emerging market bond indices, tracked by more than $200 billion of funds in September, triggering a sell-off. While the Naira has been all but fixed at about 198 to 199 per dollar since March, forward prices suggest it will drop by almost 1/5 in a year. The number one issue is the exchange rate. Access to foreign exchange is becoming a widespread problem. Conclusion: so far the Buhari administration has done all the wrong things, and I couldn't agree more. Nigerian all share down 20.08% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index down 12.62% year to date. Investors keep off short-term treasury bills as yields dip. That's here in Kenya. Basically, 182 paper yield 10.09%, 364-day paper yield 11.934%, but the overnight rate is in single digits, and the central bank has created a positive sloping yield curve, which is encouraging people to play in this market. But versus bank deposits, treasury bills are now significantly below, so I think you're seeing money filter back into the banks. My trade of the year was on the 7th of October when I said buy 1-year treasury bills. At that time they were at 23%. Now they are at 11.934%, which is a big move, whichever way you want to call it. Pope Pontifex, we landed and said Mungu Abariki Kenya, which means God bless Kenya. Look at this photograph of him aboard the papal plane, and this photograph of the plane landing in Nairobi. The Fahari I-REIT income REIT managed to raise 3.6 billion shillings through the offering, Stanlib said in a notice, and that's therefore excess. The minimum was 2.6 billion, so they got more than that, but they have a difficult environment that they launched into. There will be a redundancy charge which will impact our full year 2015 performance, Standard Chartered said in a statement without indicating how many employees would be retrenched. The forecasted increased impairment and redundancy charges may result in the full year forecasted earnings to 31 December falling below the 2014 full year earnings by at least 25%. I think this is all priced into the share, which is trading at a trailing PE of 6.715. Nation Media bets on print with $20 million press. A good interview in Reuters. Nation Media CEO Joe Mugenda, appointed in July, said it's still a solid business. People are still buying newspapers. By comparison, Nation Media's digital business, which includes several websites, was gaining traffic but accounted for less than 5% of revenue. The company's new 2 billion shilling printing press, to be commissioned early next month, will improve the quality of Nation Media's newspapers by offering better resolution and other benefits. We wouldn't do that if we had any doubts about our newspaper business. Second half will be better than the first half. We're going to live or die by our content. Nation Media's bounced 10.21% off multi-year lows actually over the last 4 weeks, but now trades on a trailing PE of just 11.52. Looks a cheap stock. We could see some buying continue to support it. Kenya shilling firm at 102.09. Nairobi all share, whilst down 10.58% this year, has rallied 6.097% in November. NSE 20 has rallied 4.55% in November. If you want to check into any share, scroll down Rich Wrap-Ups and click on the last link. And let's hope to see you at Mindspeak tomorrow, which I'm sure will be very interesting. Brenda Gitone is a friend and charismatic. Very, very interesting indeed.